As I mentioned to you earlier, we are piggybacking on my friend Tom Snyder's radio show so that we can use his phone system, and we have so many phone calls backed up now that I'd like to warn our affiliates that we're going to be going just a couple of minutes over so that we could accommodate a few more calls. Our guests, T. Boone Pickens and Muriel Siebert, and we go back out to Los Angeles and Tom Snyder. And Tom, another caller, please.
Ted, before that, may I ask you in all seriousness how much you're going to extend, because I have some considerations here, too, that I have to worry about.
Just a couple of minutes, Tom.
Okay, all right, fine. Next caller is Tom in Chicago, who talks about situation beyond logic. Tom, you're on the air with Ted Koppel, and won't you go ahead, please?
Hi.
Hi.
I watched 4 really strongly based economic stocks take a beating yesterday, and that means to me paranoia, panic, or program selling. When these computer programs get so sophisticated that they don't take on any logic anymore, what do we expect when small fluctuations can trigger these programs into another joyride like yesterday?
Boy, I'm really glad you asked that question. Muriel Siebert, would you pick up on that and explain to us what it is that the caller is talking about?
The program trading is a computerized trading where we have these new index options, which are roughly 2, 3, 4 years old. Now, they represent a basket of stocks. So you buy the stocks and you short the option, or vice versa. What happens is people have been using these computer-driven programs, and they will sell the option, which puts pressure on the stocks. And we saw wave and wave and wave of that yesterday. Now, in my opinion, they should stop this because they are not creative. They do not add capital to the country. It is really not a productive use of capital for this country.
All right, Mr. Pickens, I'd like to pose a question to you, which is based on something you said just before we went to a commercial break before. You were indicating that some of these brokerage houses may be in trouble. We have heard worse than that. We have heard that some of the big brokerage houses may be on the verge of collapse. What would that mean if it were true, and do you have any reason to believe it is true?
Well, you know, I've heard the same rumors you have, and that's all I have heard are rumors. Hopefully that's all they are. And but you know, that would be disquieting to the whole process too if we had a couple of these major brokerage houses go under. So you know, we're going to know about that in a short period of time, and that's why I think that, you know, we're going to see a little up and down here for the rest of the week. And I think next week, if we can work our way through it, well, we're going to see the market go ahead and move back up again, not in a dramatic fly up, but it'll move back up to levels that we'll be more comfortable with.
Ron Napier, let's end where we began. It always amazes me how quickly some of these rumors fly around the world. Have you been hearing the same things in Tokyo about some brokerage houses being in trouble, and what impact is it having over there?
We've heard some rumors about some U.S. houses being in trouble. It basically is just an item of interest here. It doesn't have anything directly to do with the Japanese securities brokers, who seem at this point not to have any difficulties. Now,
I understand you've been with us for the past half hour, but just to recapitulate, since this is our first indication of how Wednesday is going to go, what do you think it's going to look like here, 8 or 9 hours from now when the market opens on Wall Street?
Well, Tokyo started the afternoon session up at a fairly strong pace, good buying levels. I think we'll find London will finally recover now that New York and Tokyo have rebounded. It's really up to New York, though. If New York sells off, I think we'll have more pressure on world stock markets. It's really hard to say exactly how it will end up. We have had positive changes in monetary policy in the 3 big countries of the world, and I think officials will work very hard to try to calm the situation.
All right, we are going to wrap it up now. I would like to thank Ron Napier in Tokyo, T. Boone Pickens, Muriel Siebert, and special thanks to Tom Snyder and to his radio audience for their help in this program tonight. We couldn't have done it without you, quite literally. A special note about our Nightline broadcast this Thursday. In the wake of Jerry Falwell's pullout from the PTL ministry and Jessica Hahn's revelations about her relationship with former PTL minister Jim Baker will join us live. That's this Thursday night. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been ABC News Nightline. If you wish a printed transcript of this or any Nightline broadcast, please send $3 to Nightline Transcripts, 2 John Street, New York, New York, 10038. Nightline is a presentation of ABC News.
District Attorney Rellen's office has successfully prosecuted 93% of felony drug indictments in Monroe County. The record speaks for Rellen.
Continuing our discussion now with Kay James in Washington, Janet Benshoff in New York, and Robin. Robin, I have to ask you, it all sounded so cut and dried, the way you put it. Almost as though, you know, the pregnancy was more of an inconvenience. It's not as though incest or your health or something was involved. You know, you wanted to keep on going to to private school. You could have gone to public school, right? I mean, it wouldn't have been that much of an inconvenience, would it?
I would have had to live at home. That would have been an inconvenience. I go to a boarding school.
Yeah, and living at home, I mean, what I'm asking is, and I'm putting it kind of brutally, and you'll have to excuse me, I don't know any other way to put it, you traded off a life for that, for your convenience.
In my opinion, I saved a lot more because by continuing my education, I can help a lot more people. If I had given up my education and had the child, if I had kept the child, I wouldn't be able to provide it. If I had given up for adoption, I mean, I'm adopted and I know what it's like, and I wouldn't want that for anybody else. So by getting my education, I can put my education to better use by helping a lot more people.
All right, Janet Benshoff, I'm still somewhat intrigued by that phrase you used before of the mature, the mature adolescent, the mature minor. Are we really talking here about 13-year-olds? I mean, can you really make the argument that a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old would not, in most cases, be better off by having the parent involved in the decision process?
First of all, most teenagers would be better off having their parents involved in the decision if it is voluntary on the teenager's part. Everybody needs parental input at all ages of their life if that is supportive input. And in fact, most teenagers do tell at least one parent, but those who do not are in desperate situations, and sending them to state court doesn't work. In fact, in Minnesota, out of 3,500 cases, not one judge in the entire state of Minnesota over a period of 5 years found that it was in the best interest of any of those minors to tell their parents.
Okay, James, you'll have to excuse me. We're out of time. I thank you. I thank Janet Benshoff. And Robin, I thank you. I appreciate you being with us. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
For a transcript, please send $3 to Nightline Transcripts, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007. Nightline is a presentation of ABC News.
Some of the Soviet advisors in Ethiopia have been critical of the economic methods. Is there any chance, I mean, I realize you're blaming the shortfall in rain, and I'm sure that has a great deal to do with the starvation that is apparently impending now. But it also seems as though the economic system is not working very well. Any chance of internal changes?
Mr. Koppel, I would like to tell you that there is a favorable political condition for agricultural development in Ethiopia. The problem, as you have seen repeatedly in the 1984 and today, is the failure of rain. Provided there is sufficient rain, at least due to the land reform which has been enacted within the country, the farmers are in a better position today to till the land and be more productive. And the resettlement program, which has enabled the farmers to settle in more fertile parts of the country, has enabled them at least to be self-productive at this time. Our problem now is still in the northern part of the country, which has been degraded and which has been overused, and that it is not, the land cannot support any more productive actions.
We're almost out of time, I'm afraid. Mr. Morris, to what degree do you think it is just terrible weather, not enough rain, and to what degree is it the economy itself? I mean, that's from the State Department's vantage point.
Well, in the short run, the lack of rain's had a terrible effect. But in the long run, there's no doubt that they've taken a bad situation and made it worse. Until they give the farmers a fair price for their product, until they give them clear title to their own land, until they allow them in the surplus provinces to sell to the farmers in the deficit provinces, they're never going to get out of this. Our studies show that there's a half a million ton deficit this year due to inherent shortfalls in their production, and that's going to get 4 times worse in the next 3 or 4 years, no matter what happens with the rain.
Let me cut you short because I want to make sure that this address goes out. I want to thank all of you, but there are many private American agencies providing relief in Ethiopia. For a list of who they are and how you can help, you can write to Interaction, Suite 1115, 200 Park Avenue South, New York, New York, 10003. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night. In government office because you consider homosexuality to be a crime. You know, at least be consistent. Problem?
Did you ask a question? I thought you were making a statement.
I was.
I didn't hear the question.
I thought you'd like to react to it, but if you don't want to, we can move on to another question. Don't you think that there ought to be a little bit of consistency? You know, it seems to me that you're picking out one form of citizen and you know, saying if someone commits a crime, they shouldn't be a member of the government, but then seem to take a far more tolerant view of someone who at age 17 engaged in a postal robbery.
Well, no, who are you talking about?
I'm talking about Lee Watkins. You just told me that when he was 17.
No, you said something about I'm picking out one segment of population or something. I missed what you're trying to say.
I was talking about gays, Governor. I thought that you, at various times during your administration, have indicated that gays should not be in the government because they commit a crime.
I haven't picked out the gays at all. They've come challenging me. I haven't gone after the gays at all.
So you have no problem with gays in government?
I didn't say that. I said I haven't gone after them.
I'm sorry, Governor. Someone was talking in my ear there. I didn't hear your answer. You have no problems with gays in government?
I said I have paid little or no attention to them.
Well, you know, we just saw in the interview that was at the head of this program during a radio interview. I regret that it was just a partial clip there. But you said if someone would give you the names of the gays in government, I got the impression that you'd kick them out of office if you found out who they were.
Let me give you what that really was. Somebody was challenging me. I never went after him. I've never even brought the subject up. Somebody was challenging me and saying we've got all these people. And I think I responded with something, well, heavens, tell me what their names are. They said, we got 250,000. I said, cool, get them all together and I'll talk to them all at once. I never went after them.
Well,
it's them that's gone after me.
If someone were, for example, to give you the names, what would you do about it?
I wouldn't do anything about it. Heavens, it's a manner of speech. Could we talk about something positive, Ted?
Well, we'll talk about some other things, Governor. We are going to take a break. We'll be back with Governor Meekum in just a moment. I'd like to begin by apologizing to our affiliates. As must be apparent to you, we have already run over. We're going to run over a couple more minutes so that we can continue our discussion with Governor Meekum of Arizona. Governor, you know, for a minute there, you had me convinced that I lost my mind here. I knew that I had heard you say what I thought you'd said. Let me read to you from a transcript of a 60 Minutes interview that you did. This ran on 60 Minutes last month. And Morley Safer said, do you believe that people who practice homosexuality should be afforded the same rights as people who are heterosexual? And you said, what are you talking about, rights? And Safer said, jobs in government. And you said, define yourself, jobs in government. Anybody who's breaking the law shouldn't have a job in government. It's up to me to uphold the law. A homosexual act is against the law. Now, that sure sounds to me as though you're suggesting that homosexuals shouldn't be in government. Am I thoroughly confusing the issue here?
Mr. Koppel, we've had a 30-minute program. You spent the first part of it telling all about the things. Would you allow me just to respond in a positive way to sort of balance this up just a little bit?
I'll tell you what, you can make all the positive announcements that you want to in the state of Arizona. I told you from the very beginning, and I've tried to be as candid with you as I can, you're not here to talk about your accomplishments in office. You're here because you've become a national figure of considerable interest. Not because you opened a trade office in Taiwan, not because you've been tough on drugs. Try and answer that question, would you?
Not because I've balanced the budget, not because I took a $150 million deficit that my predecessor gave me and got together with the legislature, not because I vetoed a tax increase.
I'll tell you what, Governor, on that $150 million deficit, you know very well that the law of Arizona already required it. It had nothing to do with you. You may have contributed to it, but they were going to balance that budget with you or without you. Had you been elected or had somebody else been elected? Now, just for a moment, let's play by my rules for a moment, and let's go back to the question that I asked you. Initially, and which it seems to me you evaded the first 2 or 3 times that I asked you. Were you not calling for the elimination of homosexuals from government office because in your view they break the law?
We have spent so much time on homosexuals.
And you have spent so much time evading. If you just answered the question a little more directly, Governor, then we could have gotten through this in about a minute or two.
I have looked at no homosexuals in state government, but I've sure looked at vetoing a tax increase. I've looked at hiring, and the first governor in the history of the state to hire a black to head a major agency. I've just finished an executive order to make sure that we finally comply our laws with all of the civil rights laws of the United States. We've got an affirmative action program.
Governor,
we're working to get jobs.
You have collected money, or have been trying to collect money, by that letter that you wrote all around the country to 25,000 like-minded conservatives asking for money to help you in your campaign here. You will clearly need the money if you're going to have a recall election. And I would like to suggest to you that if you want to use the money then to talk about the various accomplishments that you've had in office, that you do it at that time. But if you're not going to answer my question, at least be forthright enough to say, Ted, I'm not going to answer your question.
Ted, I have answered your question, and let me tell you, you said you wanted to tell people what was going on in Arizona.
No.
There's a lot more going on than homosexuals in the state.
I am sure that is so, and one of these days we will do a program on Arizona. This is not a program on Arizona. This is a program on the governor of Arizona, who is up for recall. And I remind you, Governor, that's really the main reason that you're the object of news attention around the country, not because of any of those other things that you've done.
Well, look, we aren't sure that I'm up for recall. They're going to got 60 days to collect the signatures. So let's see how that goes along as time goes on.
All right. One other question, Governor, and then we'll call it a night. We made a few calls down in Arizona today, and what we're hearing is that some 26 conventions have canceled over the last few months, costing the state of Arizona some $46 million. Now, I've read where you claim that the convention business has gone up.
It is. It's up over 10% in Phoenix, and it's up over 42% in Tucson.
So what are all those figures about, $46 million worth of lost convention money?
Well, I wish I knew, because the convention business is up. Our tourism business is up. The economy of Arizona is booming. It's doing very well. So you tell me. That's what I tried to tell you, is you really ought to see the horror stories in the Phoenix newspapers. In Tucson, it isn't that way.
Yeah, I'm not talking about horror stories in the Phoenix newspaper, Governor. I'm talking about calls that we made to the Office of Tourism in your state, presumably. They're under your sponsorship of some kind or another. Are they not state offices?
Did you talk to my Department of Tourism? I don't think so.
That's who we talked to, Governor, and they're the ones who are telling. They're the ones who are telling us 26 conventions canceled, $46 million gone.
I really hate to differ with you, Mr. Koppel, but you didn't get those figures in the Department of Tourism. My Department of Tourism has got the statistics where we're up over 11%.
Well, we'll have to.
Why is it that it's so hard for you people to accept positive figures when they really are factual?
I guess because some of the positive figures and some of the positive statements, Governor, really are open to legitimate debate, and I guess the time for that is going to be coming in Arizona over the next few weeks. If that recall election happens, that'll be what, next spring?
I really don't know. I suppose it'll be May or June, along in there sometime.
You just haven't paid any attention to it, right?
Oh, yes. No, I've been told. I said May or June. That's what I've been told. I've paid attention to it, of course.
Okay. Governor Meekum, it was good of you to come on tonight, and I appreciate you being here with us. Thank you.
All right. You bet.
That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been ABC News Nightline. If you wish a printed transcript of this or any Nightline broadcast, please send $3 to Nightline Transcripts, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007. Nightline is a presentation of ABC News.
The chance of a gross contamination. You saw what happened to the young, unfortunate doctor from Baltimore who cut himself in a capillary tube. I deal with thousands of times the potential virus particles that he did every day.
Dr. Abel, when you get right down to it, though, isn't what you're saying simply that you don't want to do, in some instances, what doctors do because you might get sick and die?
In many ways, that's what I'm saying. I will reluctantly admit to that, yes.
All right. I want to raise with you, and we'll discuss it at greater length when we come back, this question of how medical professionals, doctors and others, know when they're dealing with AIDS patients. Regardless of the question of whether you treat them or not, there is this outstanding question of whether doctors and other professionals ought to know, and we'll discuss that when we continue in a moment. Continuing our conversation with Drs. Ronald Abel and Stephen Caiazza. Dr. Caiazza, if there's one thing I think we learned from the setup piece this evening, it is that hospital operating rooms, and indeed hospitals in general, are kind of bloody places. And given the risk of contagion that we saw illustrated in the tragic case of Dr. Aoun, would it not be only fair for doctors and other healthcare professionals to be able to know when they go in to treat a patient whether or not that patient has the AIDS virus?
I don't see how that would really change anything. I don't see how that would change surgical technique. Proper surgical technique is proper surgical technique. And if it is observed, then no one's going to be infected with anything.
But I've talked to a number of doctors, all of whom say that one way or another in orthopedic surgery and other kinds of surgery, inevitably accidental things happen. Special precautions can be exercised, but not maintained at a high level at all times, as Dr. Abel suggested. Isn't it really a reasonable thing to ask for testing? And if it's, and even if you think it's not, I mean, if you don't think it's going to do any good, are there not other reasons that you oppose it? That's really what I'm trying to get at.
I oppose it because, for the reasons that it's being done. I oppose it because I feel it's going to create a whole generation of second-class citizens to whom we will deny medical care. That's immoral, that's unethical, and it's also clearly illegal.
Dr. Abel, what is your view on that point?
Well, there's always a conflict between the individual care of a patient and what's right for society. I think that we have a major problem controlling this epidemic. It's been called by Dr. Bowen the major public health issue we're facing. And by not testing the hospitalized patient, we're not able to control that very population. The Surgeon General gets on television and tells normal heterosexual kids to use condoms if they can't be sexually abstinent, and yet we're told that we can't test our patients. A few days ago, I admitted an IV drug abuser who was out of it and fell down and bled into his chest, was obviously at high risk for AIDS. I couldn't take his blood for a test unless he gave me his permission.
I understand. Dr. Abel, thank you. Dr. Caiazza, thank you as well. I'll have to make that the last word. Thank you both. That's our report for tonight. I'm Britt Hume in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.